the repeated gutting of the Voting Rights Act is one of those things that radicalized the Republican Party, made America less democratic, made voter suppression and gerrymandering easier to do. And that's why we end up with someone like Trump in the first place.
Welcome to the Practivist Pod, the practice of activism made practical.
Today we talk about the heinous young Republican group chat uncovered by Politico and what it means about the future of the Republican Party and also our young men. We also look at where we are with the Trump shutdown, or as my phone wants to autocorrect it, shit down, and what's happening in the hellscapes of Portland and Chicago.
Then I have a conversation about voting rights and the Republican power grab with Mother Jones correspondent and author of Minority Rule, The Right-Wing Attack on the Will of the People and the Fight to Resist It, Ari Berman.
I'm Jessica Craven.
I'm Steve Pearson.
Hold on. Stay strong. It won't be long. Yeah. We will build a better world.
My God, how's it going?
Hellscapes. The hellscapes of
Hellscapes
Chicago.
everywhere.
I remember when, and this is really the right-wing, conservative, propaganda that they're picking up on from the Trump regime about these cities is working. Because I remember when the National Guard first came to L.A., I made some Facebook post about, how horrible it was and how ridiculous it was and how illegal it was. And I have a couple of friends who are Republicans on Facebook, old friends. This guy's I probably unfriended him by now, but he said, L.A. is burning. I've seen it. And I was like, LA is burning, like playing the video footage of that, those two Waymos that got set on fire. And of course, there's bad actors in all situations. But, the ridiculous idea that Chicago and Portland are these, violent hellscapes that Trump is trying to put out there. Actually, there's people who believe it because of the right-wing media that amplifies this stuff. So it's important that we keep showing all of the amazing videos of people like dancing in the streets and dressing up like stuffed frogs and hot dogs or whatever, and how ridiculous that video was of Kristi Noem on the roof of the ICE facility looking down at basically non-existent protests, below. So
one person dressed up like a duck or whatever that person was. Yeah, I mean, thank God for content creators right now. Thank God that every person has a video camera in their phone and access to social media, because the mainstream media has just failed this moment so badly. Because yes, even people on the left are like, well, I don't know, maybe it really is on fire in Portland. That is the media. That is their fault. Like, it is not hard to get in a car and drive around a city and show the world, like, it's not on fire, folks. Like, this is, we have access to lots of camera crews and we're going to show you that it's not, but they don't do that. And so thank God you have regular people. And, I did it when LA was the focus, going up and standing at the observatory and showing people the entire city so they could see no smoke, because really people fall for it. But shame on the mainstream media and the corporate media for not making it clear. And thank God for every person with a phone and, camera who is going out there and just saying, like, look at what's happening. Thank God. I'm sorry that people are getting their news from social media, but on the other hand, at least social media, there's still the freedom and the ability for people to go out with some agility and nimbleness and show what's actually happening in the moment.
It's such a great point because, beyond just being irresponsible in the coverage, Fox News actually played footage of Portland from 2020 in the wake of the George Floyd stuff, which the president saw and was like, I just saw the news. I just saw footage of burning buildings and rioting in Portland, So it's beyond irresponsible. It's propaganda. But, when you think about authoritarians' rise to power and the propaganda, that they use to do that, we are in a time when everybody has a very sophisticated camera in their pockets that they can live stream and expose to truth. And, just piggybacking on last week's episode, the truth is winning. It's hard to push out these false narratives when you can literally live stream something and show it. So, it's an interesting time to be alive. Jess Craven.
Yeah, well, and to say the least. And also, I think that the corollary to that is that people can go out and film what is happening with ICE in real time, and that is also very important, because if you don't live in a city where these ICE raids are happening, you do not understand how, and you and I live here, so we know this, how invaded you feel, how violated you feel, how horrifying it is to see your city sort of gather into itself and people hiding and people terrorized. It is unspeakably awful. And, I happened upon a post by a woman in Chicago who was just walking through her neighborhood and talking about what was happening and talking about how terrible it was, but also talking about how neighbors were helping neighbors. And, this kind of post is so incredibly valuable. Just regular people talking about what's happening in their city, how terrifying it is, but also how people are banding together. Like, this is deeply inspiring. So right now, for example, I wouldn't know how horrible things are in Chicago if it weren't for people like her covering it. Because again, the mainstream media, I don't know what the hell they're doing, but people like her are covering it, and we should all follow them. Look for people who are either local reporters or local residents who are in Chicago, who are in Portland, and follow them and amplify what they're saying, because we have become the press, more or less. That there's mainstream media is just has failed. It is just it's done. So
it's true.
It's our job to amplify.
Absolutely. And we can all do it, no matter how big, we talk about this all the time, no matter how big our, circle of influence is or small, we still have the ability to amplify and do that. So we should. Yeah. And I was actually talking a little bit with Ari Berman, our guest this week, who is really the voting rights expert and has two great books. One, Give Us the Ballot, about the modern day struggle for voting rights, and his newest book, Minority Rule, which really articulates, really well how the Republicans have, weaponized the inequities in our system. We are not really representational. The Electoral College, how unbalanced the Senate is, how, unbalanced the House is, and the bargains that the southern states made to create it that way. He goes through all of that, and then how Republicans have for decades and decades weaponized immigration and these issues that divide us to hold on to power, even though they are the minority of the country. But we also did touch a little bit, because he's a journalist. He is correspondent for Mother Jones, and we didn't get into it too deeply. But I just wanted to check in with him about how he's doing, because not only is the media structure just kind of a big question mark right now about where people are going to get news, how funding's going to happen, but also the Trump regime's attacks on the free press make it a very difficult environment for journalists to do their work. So anyway, I'm excited for everyone to hear the interview, because he's really is the expert on that. We talk about the impending SCOTUS decision that we're going to find out maybe before this airs. But about the voting right. Oh yeah, oof, that's a terrifying one. Louisiana v. Calais, which could essentially gut what's remaining of the teeth of the Voting Rights Act, and that's happening kind of as we are recording this right now. So,
right,
but it's up to us anyway. The bullet point is amplify. We are the ones on the ground right now reporting.
Yeah, I will say I found there were a couple of hopeful things this week. First of all, I'm sure everybody saw the footage of George Stephanopoulos cutting off J.D. Vance when J.D. Vance refused to answer a question about Tom Homan and the bag of cash. Cutting him off, saying you did not answer the question, and ending the segment. That went viral on social media, and I think partially just because people are dying for the press to do that, to say, you're lying, the interview's done. And George Stephanopoulos finally did it. So that was really hopeful.
J.D. Vance killed himself in that one, too. His, I think what people really want to hear is this question. Here's the question that you should be asking me. And he's like, well, this is the question that I'm asking you, and you're not answering it.
J.D. Vance, I did a video about how by the end of one of those, he was on Face the Nation. By the end of the interview, he was sweating. So he looked like his meme. He'd sort of become, I don't know, he's really... Oh, it was a bad weekend for him. But anyway, the other thing I want to say is that we've seen the press band together and say that they would not agree to the Pentagon's new... Pentagon had these crazy new rules. We want you to sign on to this thing before we give you access. And every single member of the press, including Fox News, I think One America, was the only news organization that agreed to it. Every other one said, no, we're not doing it. And that is the kind of thing the mainstream media has the power, if they band together, to say, you can't abuse this anymore in the White House press office, or none of us will show up. You can't, and they haven't done it, and they can. And so maybe this is the beginning of them starting to say, no, we're not going to put up with this bullshit anymore, and you won't have any of us covering you. Which, of course, it comes with its own set of problems, but
right.
I'd like to see more of that. I'd like to see the press.
But yes,
we do. We need the coverage, but we also need them to stop being doormats and tools of the Trump regime. So hopefully we'll start to see that.
That was
in the
very
meantime, encouraging. Yeah, it was. It was. That was going to be my reason for hope, but I chose something else.
Okay, good. Well, we can have extra reasons for hope. I mean, we all need that, and I'm glad you highlighted that. And it's a good segue into some, really good and, truly incredible reporting from Politico about this young Republican group chat where, they're literally like praising Hitler. And it's just kind of not surprised. Like, I think the most surprising thing for me was my lack of surprise, like that I didn't read that and go, oh my God. It was just, I kind of like wasn't like riled up over it because I sort of assume that's what's going on behind closed doors in these chats. And I think that speaks in a really sad way to where we are. We've been hit with so much outrage and so much, blatant overt racism and hate, and this, like you talked about what we're seeing from ICE raids and just this horrible stuff that we see, like this massive group chat of young Republicans praising Hitler, and we're like, oh yeah, that's another thing, but it's really, really speaks a lot about where the Republican Party is right now.
Yeah, well, I think it's I was glad to see that story break because I think that we have to stop pretending that this is a normal party or that this is a viable party in any way anymore. And this is real proof. Like, here is the heart and soul of your party right here. Here are your young, burgeoning leaders. I mean, these are all like leaders of the, state parties. They're broken. They've gone, they're subsumed in hate. These people, they don't even know. There's no moral compass. There's no policy. This is not about policy anymore. They don't give a shit about building anything. They are just filled with a toxic hate. And unfortunately, under normal circumstances, there's a society that sort of says you can't be that. And so there's shame, right? You have shame exists and you try to bury that part of yourself if you have it. But now there's Donald Trump has created a permission structure for this horrific ideology to just be out there. And so these guys think it's okay. And I think that it's a horrifying article because you realize we've really come to this moment where it's like, talk about a fork in the road. Like, we have got to reassert as a culture, this is not okay.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Donald Trump has not come out and said anything about that article, and he's not going to because these are his people. Yeah. So, I mean, it's nice to see some Republican leaders say, oh, this is so horrifying, but bullshit, right? It's not, you're not horrified by it, or otherwise you would have walked away from Trump a long time ago. But we are going to have to reckon with this, right? We're going to have to reckon with the fact that this large chunk of our young populace has been sucked into a party that is just a black hole of hate. How do we solve that? What do we do about this? Because this is not, it's nihilism in its truest form. It's not, it can't grow or build. It can only destroy. So we're going to have to reckon with it, and we're going to need leadership who can show a different way. You know, I think of like an Andy Bashir or I don't know, a J.B. Pritzker. I'm not going to say Gavin Newsom because I don't think he's not the moral guy for that. In my opinion, it doesn't really matter right now, but we need moral leadership is what we need. And we don't have it. We don't have it in the Republican Party at all. We have a moral void that is being filled with poison.
Yeah. And this speaks into the deeper, obviously, this, you know, no one in the Republican Party who's part of this group chat, it wasn't just young men, you know, gets a pass on this, but especially what we're seeing with young men and the trending towards, you know, this really dark shit that they're, the role models that they have, the role models that get spun up to them on social media and on YouTube. And, you know, what can start with an innocent web search and lead them down this wormhole where they're just being inundated with this stuff. And, you know, their views on what it means to be a man and masculinity and, you know, this whole zero sum thinking that Republicans have had a long time, but now is weaponized into like, you know, I'm going to get mine no matter what. And if you're, in my way, then you must be destroyed. And, you know, just this like inhuman way of operating that from a very early age, young men are being taught this is what it is to be, you know, masculine. And, and so, you know, all of those, you know, moral leaders that you talked about, absolutely. You know, I think about what Tim Walz did actually in the campaign, and we need more of that because he really showed, you know, what it was to be, you know, a man, but be compassionate and, you know, that, you know, to be a man, that means you're taking care of people. If you want to take that role of caretaker, you're not breaking people down, you're bringing people in and you're being, you know, responsible for your community. And, so, you know, we have a lot of work to do. You talk about reckoning with stuff. And again, Ari and I talked a little bit about this, but there's the short-term work that we have to do to get back in power. But then there's the long-term project we have to really remake our government and remake our society where we, like you said, call this out. Don't make it okay. Don't have my reaction where I read this and it's like yet another news story, but, you know, shout from the rooftop, this is not okay. This is not who we are, and really put to the forefront better examples for our young people. Because if we don't do that, then we're going to be in this cycle. It's only going to get worse. We really need to address the systemic issues here.
Yeah. This has got to be a central platform for whoever comes into leadership next, of just like, what happened after the Civil War, right? It was never dealt with. Like the white supremacy, the hatred, what had happened to our country, this horrific crime of enslaving human beings, we didn't deal with it. And so it's just never stopped. Like it really has never stopped it. We need like a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, or I don't know what it is, but yeah, we got to deal with the hate that is under all of this, that caused this fear. And this is the last thing I'll say on it. The really sad thing is that so these guys are in their group chat, and yeah, there's one woman in there too, God knows why and how, but you know, they're doing all their hateful shit, and they're like, but like ultimately in the real world, you can't thrive that way. You can't connect with other human beings. You're not going to succeed in your relationships. You're going to be a horrible fucking parent. You're going to alienate the people in your life, or they'll be afraid of you, which is not a way to live. You won't succeed in work. Like, these are not survival skills. This is not a way for people to thrive in the world. And so they're being taught this hate, which will not serve them. It will destroy them.
It already
is, as you and I both.
It already is.
It's just
We're seeing
Right.
this epidemic of loneliness from young
Right.
men, you know,
Right.
and they are, everything you just described is happening. And I
Yeah.
think it's a
Right.
really good connection to make behind these things, which separate you from society, separate you from real human connection. That's what young
Right.
men are feeling right now. They're feeling separated. They're feeling lonely. And so they're grasping on to whatever kind of cultish, you know, hateful community they can find some kind of acceptance in. And,
Right, which
know,
will
we've got-
guarantee that they stay separated
Yeah.
and stay lonely. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the crazy irony of it, is that it guarantees them a life of failure, basically, because you can't succeed in the world being that filled with hate. You just can't.
Yeah.
You might for a while, but like ultimately you're going to end up bitter, alone, ruined. You can't thrive. So anyway, this is a larger conversation, but
It's a good one.
yeah, it's a good one. But so I'm glad we talked about that, but now let's not talk about it anymore because it's really depressing.
All right. Well, yeah, that's a great conversation, and we'll go deeper with that. We need to have more of those conversations, and we'll
Yeah.
bring some guests in that can really speak to that as well. Before we move on to our reasons for hope, though, and our to-do list, let's just talk briefly about where we are with this Trump shutdown. We're in 2 weeks in now, with no clear end in sight, and you know, the Democrats are in the Senate and they keep trying to pass a resolution that would, you know, secure the ACA subsidies, that would restore funding to Medicaid and Medicare. And there is zero negotiation, zero. And, you know, Trump has mandated, it comes from Trump, that, you know, he doesn't want any Republicans to even talk to Democrats. So this process of governing that we have had since the inception of our country, where you have two people with opposing viewpoints that find a way to compromise and say, okay, well, you know, let's restore half the Medicaid funding, or
Right,
nothing.
right.
None of
Yeah.
that's even happening. So there's just no end to sight. And you did a great video about just Mike Johnson's self-own about how unpopular government is with people right now when he's leading the government.
Yeah, it is a really it's hard to imagine how this ends. It's really because, you know, Democrats are very dug in. They're very determined. They've got popular opinion behind them. Yeah, people want these healthcare subsidies. They need Democrats to pass this budget. And yeah, Mike Johnson is just right. He's just like, let's stay on vacation. Let's stay out of town. Adelita Grijalva still hasn't been sworn in. Like, the entire thing is so dysfunctional at this point. And they are sort of giving the money that is needed in dribs and drabs. Like, they're finding a way to pay the military. They're finding a way, to their credit, to continue SNAP payments. And so that being done, like, they have no incentive to reopen the government. So it's just this crazy moment of like, how long is our government going to be shut down? It's unclear. I'm glad the Democrats are doing what they're doing. I'm glad they're continuing to fight. But Republicans, the problem is they don't actually want a government. Although that will put them all out of a job, but they don't seem to care for having a government at all. So I'm not really sure how this ends. They're like, oh, good, we don't have to do any work and we still get paid. Great.
Well, I mean, you know, wouldn't that be nice for all of us? But you're heading to D.C. in next week or the week after or something like that to...
the week after. I'm supposed to go for like a Senate content creator thing, but if the government stays shut down, it might get canceled. So it's just hard to say. I might go anyway and just talk to some senators and stuff because Democrats are there waiting to do their job. They've got time on their hands because no one will come and work with them. So they can do some interviews. But
they got time for interviews. No excuses to book those interviews. That's a good point. I'm going to make some calls now.
I'm going to wander the halls of Congress and see if I can find Mike Johnson. That's going to be my goal.
Wow. I want to see that. Okay. That's going on this show. If you get that footage. Oh my gosh. All right. Let's talk about our to-do list. Because I really want everyone to get to the interview with Ari. It's just so substantive and important, but, this is it. This is the weekend, Jess. The 18th, this Saturday, No King's Day. So far, like the signups, the number of rallies that are happening across the country are, dwarfing what has happened before. I'm really excited for this one. I think it's going to be huge. And so, I don't even know why we're talking about this. Anyone listening to this show, I'm sure you're already set up to go to No King's Day. But in the off chance someone shared this podcast with you and you didn't know about it, make sure you sign up. On our show notes, we have a link for you to find a rally near you. And wear fun, festive clothes. Bring some music and noisemakers and make it a party. Because
yellow. You're supposed to wear yellow, Steve.
Yellow. I just heard that. Why is that? Do you know why?
Indivisible, just, they just chose, I think there was a sense that like a color was needed. Different movements have had different colors that they sort of wear, and yellow.
They chose the most unflattering for my skin tone, so I appreciate that.
I like it. It's a good one for me. But yeah, they went through all of the other colors and why that one would not be like, well, this one's already taken and that one represents that and this one. And then they settle on yellow, which, yes, I like, but I don't think it's a tone that a lot of people love wearing, but wear yellow. Just do it for the cause.
I will head to a thrift store today and find like a really cool, mostly yellow Hawaiian shirt or something. And so
there you go. Yeah.
That'll work.
Yeah.
So
I have lots of yellow clothes, but yeah, it's good. So yes, everybody should go to a No Kings. If you don't want to sign up, that's fine. There are people who are like, well, I don't want to put my name on an RSVP form. That's fine. Just that's there for the organizers, so they know how many porta potties to have, things like that. But it doesn't matter.
Just show up.
If you sign,
can just go.
Just show up. Yeah, there's no need. If you don't have a sign, go anyway. Someone will probably have an extra, or they'll have a sign making station. But if you have time, grab a piece of cardboard, just it can be anything. You can just write No Kings on your sign. People get very creative, but you don't have to get creative in order to go and participate.
LA's tough. We got a lot of really, really witty, smart writers in Los Angeles. The sign game is strong here. Hard to compete with that.
The sign game is, you can't. I don't even try. I just kind of go, because the sign game is insane here. When I went to that Jimmy Kimmel protest, it was the Writers Guild.
Right.
Yeah, it was just like, oh, forget it. There was just, you can't compete with the Writers Guild when they do signs. So you just, you do your best.
You do your best, but show up, and I'm excited, and I can't wait. And send us your pictures too. You can send them to hello@practivistpod.com and share them on social media, of course. The other thing that we absolutely need to be doing is working on Prop 50, getting that passed. Also, important elections in Virginia and New Jersey, which I usually talk about all the time right now. I've been so wrapped up in Prop 50, I'm not talking about enough. But I did go canvassing over the weekend for Prop 50. It was great. And, once again, conversations were easy. People support it, but there's people who just didn't know about it. They got their ballot. They saw there was a thing that said Prop 50. It was sitting there, but they're like, what is Prop 50? And I think those of us who kind of are inundated and live in this, world where we hear everything about everything, think, how could somebody miss this? How could someone not know about it? But it's a special election. We haven't had a lot of time to put it up. And so, it's a great opportunity, especially if you've never canvassed before and you've been intimidated about having conversations with voters. This is super easy. The conversations are really easy because everyone's supported. They just need to know about it. So links will be in our show notes. Sign up for a canvas if you can, or phone bank from anywhere. We got to get this passed.
Yeah. Or just sit down and go through your contacts. I mean, if you don't have time to do any of that, just send a text message to people who live in California. It's a big state. Almost everybody knows somebody there. And just say like, hey, friendly reminder. I hear this election is really, really important. Just make sure you send that ballot back. So many people have no idea. It's terrifying, actually.
It's scary, but also exciting because we as activists look for places where we can make an impact. And on a low turnout election like this, you really can. The people you talk to could be difference makers in this. So that's exciting.
Yeah, good point.
Speaking of exciting, let's hear about your second reason for hope this week.
Okay. My reason for hope is the emergency Portland naked bike ride that happened this weekend. So there's a account on Instagram that is the Portland naked bike ride. They just do these naked bike rides. They usually do them during the summer, and there's some footage. It's great, like naked people bike ride naked. But they called an emergency one for Sunday. What's that?
You got to clean those seats. I hope they have wet wipes.
Yeah, I don't know how it works. I mean, the idea of it to me is just, from just a purely physical comfort standpoint is like, ew. But they called an emergency one for Sunday, and I saw it on Instagram a few days before it was going to happen, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. I wonder, if this is going to be big, not big. Well, it was huge, and it was pouring rain. It looked freezing, legitimately so cold.
Yeah.
And people wore people were wearing clothes for the most part because it was so cold. And rain things. But there was this massive, some people were naked or partially naked bike ride to protest ICE. And they ended up at the ICE facility, standing there in the rain, halfway naked. I think they did a die-in on a bridge. And it was just, this kind of imaginative activism in the face of the cruelty and authoritarianism of the Trump regime is really beautiful to see. And we also know from history it's really effective.
Yeah.
And, hats off to everybody in Portland who participated in
Everything
that bike
off.
ride. It's a beautiful
Hats,
thing.
clothes, all
hats
of it off.
Good one, Steve.
There you go.
Yes, exactly.
Tee
All right,
that
what's
one
your
up
reason
for
hope?
me.
I did.
So that's great. My reason for hope is a personal one, and I am very blessed in my life because I have a really wonderful, supportive family and an incredible life partner. And yesterday we celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary, which is crazy. But through all that we've been through, and everyone has things that they go through personally, health stuff, and work issues, ups and downs of life, and then big picture stuff around where we are as a nation, and 25 years with Melinda of screaming at Bush Jr. and watching The Daily Show and laughing and crying at the same time, and being like so relieved and happy to have our first black president and watch Obama work, and just all the ups and downs, knowing that I have a partner like Melinda, I'm very blessed, gives me so much hope for our future personally, because I know that, we're going to be walking through whatever comes, together. And so I love that woman like crazy. And, 25 years in LA is I think like supposed to be like 50 years in other cities.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's my personal reason for hope, and sending out a happy anniversary to my wife as well.
Aw, congratulations to both of you. 25 years is huge.
Thank you. Yeah. It's a big number.
It's a wonderful thing. That is.
All right. So that's it for us. I'm really excited for everyone, if you haven't heard from Ari Berman, to hear from him right now. So here's our interview with Ari Berman. Ari Berman is the national voting rights correspondent for Mother Jones. He is also the author of the book Minority Rule, The Right-Wing Attack on the Will of the People and the Fight to Resist It, as well as Give Us the Ballot, The Modern Struggle for Voting Rights in America, two absolutely essential books. And I'm so grateful for you for writing them. And thanks for being here. It's great to see you again.
Hey, Steve. Great to see you too. Thank you.
These days I like to start with the wellness check. There has certainly in my life never been a time when our free press has been so blatantly attacked as now. So how you doing, man? Are you hanging in there? What's going on?
Yeah, I feel like wellness checks are very dicey these days. Just like, how are you doing is a very, very loaded question.
Yeah.
Trump 2 has been significantly more challenging than Trump 1. Not to sugarcoat Trump 1, but just the scope of the threats and the weaponization of government is so much greater this term than previously. And it's very difficult as a journalist because there's so many stories for us to pursue, and there's so many different outrages, particularly in the democracy space. But at the same time, our profession is also under attack. So it feels like, on the one hand, there's all of these big picture things that we're wrestling with. But then there's also this question of, like, what's happening to our industry? Is our industry going to is survive or co-opted? And I don't have to worry so much about those kind of things at Mother Jones, but I do have to worry about, is the government going to come after us if they don't like a story? Is it going to be harder for us to do our jobs? That kind of thing. So yeah, it's challenging. But I do think it's important, and hopefully people are paying attention.
Yeah. Well, your work is essential. Mother Jones obviously is a incredible, important source of information for everyone. Everyone should be subscribing everywhere. When we last spoke, we spoke in 2020, and then we spoke again June of 2021. I had to go back on the How We Win podcast. And there was a bit of hope that we would be able to pass some meaningful voting rights legislation, including establishing independent redistricting commissions nationwide. But of course, the Republicans blocked that in the Senate, and we weren't willing to overcome the filibuster to get that passed. Now the Supreme Court is about to weigh in on Louisiana v. Calais. That could effectively dismantle what's left of the Voting Rights Act. You can correct me if I'm overstating that, but can you explain this case and what's at stake here?
Yeah, I mean, it would certainly take away the most effective remaining part of the Voting Rights Act. The Voting Rights Act could still exist, but it would basically be a dead letter. And what has happened is, over the last few decades, the Supreme Court has severely weakened the Voting Rights Act in a number of different ways. And now what they're looking at is whether majority-minority districts, basically districts that would protect the right of people of color to be elected, whether those districts are unconstitutional. Under the 14th and 15th Amendment, which really is a perverse reading of the 14th and 15th Amendment, because the 14th and 15th Amendment were designed to give new rights to previously disenfranchised communities and to treat them the same as everybody else. And what they're doing is they're using a law, the Voting Rights Act, that was meant to effectuate the promise of the 14th and 15th Amendment, and then actually saying, no, we're going to use the 14th and 15th Amendment not as a means to equality, but as a weapon to roll back equality. So it's very dangerous, very concerned about the process of this case. This case was supposed to be decided last year. And what happened was, or last term, I should say, and what happened was they punted on issuing a decision, and they broadened the argument to look at really the constitutionality of this key part of the Voting Rights Act. So if the Voting Rights Act is struck down or narrowed in this context, what it will mean is that racial gerrymandering will be a lot easier to do. Partisan gerrymandering will be even easier to do, because you can just claim that everything is partisan. And there really will be no policing of gerrymandering at all, either racial or partisan. And I think that will have influence on both red and blue states, but I think it's pretty clear that Republicans are going to be the ones that will use this more aggressively to their advantage. Yeah.
I mean, it's basically kind of an asinine argument of reversed racism, right? That they're trying to pull here. Like, obviously everything is about gerrymandering right now. I just learned the etymology behind the term gerrymandering too. That it was a map that looked like a salamander, and it was Representative Jerry who had drawn it. And they said it's actually a gerrymander.
Yeah.
So, which is a cute story, but you talk about it a lot in your book. I'm going to hold up your book because I have it right here.
Thank you.
This has obviously been a right-wing power grab for a long time, and you talking in the book about the evolution and the role of gerrymandering and the right wing's, stranglehold on minority rule. Now we're fighting back here in California with Prop 50. Why? What's your view on Prop 50, and why do you think it's important?
Well, I think that this is a time when, unfortunately, people have to fight fire with fire. I mean, it would be really great if every state would ban partisan gerrymandering, and it would be even better if the federal government banned it in all 50 states. That's what they were trying to do with the Freedom to Vote Act.
Right.
But if that doesn't happen, it's really an unfair situation where red states like Texas can redistrict whenever they want, as aggressively as they want. But blue states have one hand behind their back, and
Right.
they are fighting for these abstract notions of fairness. But really what it's leading to is a lack of fairness in terms of overall representation. So if the House is skewed because Texas passes a gerrymander and California is not able to fight back, I don't see how that leads to more fairness on an overall level. I also know that Democrats are going to be more likely to pursue a fair redistricting process than Republicans, because they have done so on a state level and they have also done so on a federal level. So
Right.
I wish we were having a different conversation right now, because I ultimately wish that we were talking about how to make redistricting as fair as possible in every state. But that's not the conversation we're having right now. We're having a conversation of, should the rules be the same in every state? And it's hard for me to see an argument that Texas should be able to gerrymander or redistrict aggressively, but California should not. It's just very hard, I think, to make that argument with a straight face right now. I know some people are trying to, but I think that California basically is put in a situation where there can't be unilateral disarmament. And so I think that's what's going on right now in the state.
Yeah, I agree. And, like you said, it's about voters being disenfranchised and trying to level what is a incredibly uneven playing field. And you talk about the development of minority rule and what Republicans have done to hold on to power so eloquently in there. Something else that you were talking about earlier when I did sort of our brief wellness check is that this regime throws 100 things at us, to overwhelm and distract. And I do want to ask you, in the midst of all of that, what is the important story that we're really missing right now, or at least we should be paying more attention to?
Well, one of the things I'm concerned about, just to stay on the topic of gerrymandering, is that it got a lot of attention in Texas when Democrats fled the state. And it was the kind of thing that a process issue, a kind of inside baseball sausage making issue, was dramatized for people in a way that they could understand, that here were people that left a state and went to Illinois and went to other places to try to dramatize that fight. And I understand why that got a lot of attention. I'm glad it got a lot of attention.
Yeah.
The problem is that Republicans have not stopped with Texas. They have done this in Missouri. They're doing it in North Carolina. They're trying to do it in Kansas. They're trying to do it in Indiana. They're going to try to do it in Florida. They're just going on down the line. And it's getting much less attention. When I covered their effort to do it in Missouri, where they were going to they're trying to eliminate one of two black Democrats in Missouri. I mean, basically holding a session just to target one member of Congress. I mean, didn't really get any attention. And Democrats held a sit-in on the House floor, didn't really get any attention. And that my worry is that kind of people are moving on, that if there's not this dramatic thing of someone fleeing a state, for example, it's just kind of overlooked as business as usual. And this is not business as usual. And even my concern about California is that if California passes this, they're going to offset what Texas does. The problem is that there's all these Republican states that are going to come after Texas. And you could still be in a situation where Republicans are up 5 to 10 seats by the time the midterm elections roll around. And yes, Democrats could theoretically overcome that if it's a big enough wave election, but it's just insane that something that is totally abnormal, mid-decade redistricting, has become completely normalized. And it's just yet again this thing where, okay, yes, Dems have to win the popular vote in the Electoral College. So they have to win the popular vote by 3 points to overcome the Electoral College. Why shouldn't they just be able to get more votes and win the election? I mean, it's crazy how many structural imbalances are built into the system. And what I'm concerned about is that people are going to move on. They're going to move on from this gerrymandering fight. And after California passes it, they're basically going to be like both parties are neutral. It's already crazy to me that Republican states are pointing to California as a reason to redistrict when California is just responding
clear response
to Texas.
Yeah.
California never would have done this if not for Texas. So there's already an attempt to rewrite history going on here. I mean, that's just one story that I think is not getting a lot of attention. There's obviously many other things that are happening right now. Even the Supreme Court case is going to be largely under the radar. I mean, there's so many other things going on. I think when it's not directly focused on Trump, people have a hard time following it and getting interested in it. And I think that's unfortunate because a lot of things that have been done by the Supreme Court have aided Trump, even if they don't directly affect Trump. And I would argue that the repeated gutting of the Voting Rights Act is one of those things that radicalized the Republican Party, made America less democratic, made voter suppression and gerrymandering easier to do. And that's why we end up with someone like Trump in the first place.
Yeah. And a great point about the other Republican states. I've heard rumblings from Maryland, New Jersey, New York, some other Democrat states about doing some redistricting of their own and haven't seen action on that. My feeling has been that they've been kind of, all eyes on California to see what happens on November 4th. What are you hearing about the pushback, the Democratic response in other states?
There has been some rumblings. I think Democrats are more constrained in general because they either have laws they can't circumvent. Like in New York, the only way to do it is to have a constitutional amendment, and you can only do that in 2 different sessions of the legislature, meaning that they can't do it before 2026. There's other states in which they're maxed out, or they worry, like in Illinois, if they do it, they're going to jeopardize some of their own members. I think generally, though, the Democrats have not been aggressive enough on this issue. I just saw an article in Politico that Missouri Democrats are trying to organize to get enough signatures to block this new gerrymander in Missouri, and they're not getting any help from the national party. And so, I mean, to me, it's illustrated 2 things. One is that Democrats don't have enough power at the state level. This is something that you and I talked about when you were at Swing Left. If you want to be able to fight back on the state level, you have to have power at the state level. And Republicans have been better at doing this than Democrats have. So Republicans are just able to gerrymander in more places because they have more power. But I think there's been more of a willingness to push the envelope by Republicans to create whatever pretext they need to be able to do this. And I don't think Democrats have done the same kind of thing. And even when Newsom started talking about this in California, people were like, it'll never happen. It's just his own political aspirations, yada, yada, yada. And I mean, some of that might be true. I mean, these are politicians after all. I don't want to argue that they don't have political aspirations. But the fact is that this was an uphill climb in California. And Newsom basically used whatever power he had to try to do this and to convince his allies that it was important to do. And I haven't seen the same level of aggressiveness from Democrats in Illinois or Democrats in Maryland or Democrats in Washington or Democrats in Colorado. So that's frustrating to me because I don't think that Democrats have been as aggressive about this issue as Republicans have been, even with the national spotlight. I think there's been a lot of rhetoric, a lot of talk, but there hasn't been as much action. Newsom's really the only person that has done something concretely to actually try to proactively do something to try to fight what Republicans are doing.
And we need it. First of all, the number one thing that Democrats want to see from their leaders is that we're fighting, that we're using every lever, no matter how small it may be. I mean, fact is we are out of power right now. And there's only so much that we can do, but we want to see our elected leaders doing everything that they can. And in your book, you talk about the fight to resist the attack on the will of the people, as you put it in the title. Beyond what we need to see elected leaders do, what can we be doing? What can and should we be doing right now to fight back against these, Trump regime power grabs?
Well, I mean, I think there's efforts to draw attention to what's happening in Washington and to resist that whenever possible. Some of that is going to be hard because the Trump administration doesn't really care what people think, and they don't really care what public opinion thinks. And so they're going to do what they want to do. And it's hard to find levers in which you can counteract what's happening in Washington. That's why I've really been urging people to take action at the state level and the local level, where you might have more control. And one of the things that's not getting as much attention in 2026 is there's a lot of really important state level races that are happening. Races for things like governor and state attorney generals and secretary of state races. These races got a lot of attention in 2022 when Trump was not on the ballot. They got a lot less attention in 2024 when Trump was on the ballot. And so the midterms is bigger than just the House or the Senate. And that's obviously critically important because that could lead to some kind of accountability in Washington. But even there, I mean, even if Democrats take back the House or the Senate, they're not going to have full control of power, right? So there's limits even there to what they can do. Whereas I would argue at the state level, there's going to be nearly 100 races for things like governor, attorney general, secretary of state. And those are critically important, not just in terms of the politics of their own state, but in terms of 2028, right? Yeah. 2028 could be absolutely crazy. We don't know if Trump's going to attempt to try to circumvent the Constitution to run again. We don't know what will happen if some of his allies run. We have no idea what the electoral system will look like after 4 more years of Trump. And so I think having those state levers of power are going to be more important than ever. And I think a lot of those races are going to be really, really important. The Virginia and New Jersey races are going to be interesting bellwethers of that. I would argue those elections are going under the radar even right now. It's October 14th, and I wouldn't say it's even close to one of the top 5 stories in the U.S. right now, those gubernatorial races. And if like those aren't the top, I would say like California, like it's just all, there's so much going on. It's all just happening so under the radar. And I know that people are making calls and people are volunteering. But I think people like, there's a lot of, we need to wait till the midterms. Well, first off, there's elections happening right now. And secondly, a lot of what's going to happen between now and then will dictate what the midterms look like.
Such a good point. Obviously, we've been talking about Virginia and New Jersey, and we've been talking a lot about Prop 50 and lots of avenues for people to get involved and make an impact. But I agree with you wholeheartedly about building state power and local power, and also just as citizens and activists who are looking to contribute and do something, that's where you can really make a tangible, impact too in your own communities. So I think that's really, really good advice, of course. You might remember from our previous meetings on the old How We Win podcast, the last question that we ask everyone. It's the same on the Practivist pod. What's giving you hope right now?
I think just the number of people that are getting informed and getting active. I mean, I think everyone felt some level of malaise after the election. And it was just easy to be like, I want to withdraw from all of it, and I might have done the same if I had the luxury of doing it. But unfortunately, I don't have that luxury, and you don't have that luxury. And I think that just seeing how many people showed up at the last No Kings protest, how many people are probably going to show up for the next ones, how many people have been engaged in terms of things like federal overreach, protests against ICE, how people are really now focused on what's happening to our democracy and wanting to see something different. What I want to see more of is not so much a game of whack-a-mole where you follow Trump from one scandal to another, but a strategy for long-term power building, which is that what are we going to do to not just survive Trump, but to end the MAGA era, right? Where Trump's policies are ascendant, right? And Trump's way of doing politics is ascendant. Because I do worry that even without Trump, that style of politics and what Trump stands for has become embedded and institutionalized in the Republican Party. And so even when Trump is gone, will that remain? So I worry about that. I do think that while we're fighting all of these short-term battles, we have to remember some of the long-term structural issues that still need to be addressed. And I understand it's hard. It's hard to think about, like, what do we do about the Electoral College? What do we do about the U.S. Senate? What do we do about the Supreme Court when all of these things are happening on a daily basis? But, one of the reasons why I wrote my book, Minority Rule, was because I do think that regardless of what happens in any given election or any given year, we have a fundamentally unfair political system that desperately needs to be reformed and reimagined. And so that's always kind of in the back of my head as I'm following this Supreme Court case or this voting rights fight or this redistricting battle. I'm always thinking of, how can we make the system better? And hopefully, as the system gets worse and worse, more people are focused on how to make it better.
I agree. That actually, in a perverted way, gives me a lot of hope, too, in terms of the damage being done to our systems of government right now, because, we're not going to we can't go back to the status quo. Like, we need to get short-term power back, as you said. And we need that short-term power back to make any of the systemic changes that we must make. But I do think that we might have a unique opportunity to really remake our government in a way that's more fair and equitable once we get power back. But like you said, it's long-term and it's whack-a-mole. It's all of the above. But thank you again, Ari. It's always great to hear from you. And I do gush over your books because they've been so helpful to me. So I recommend everyone goes out and checks them out. And thanks for being on the Practivist Pod.
Thanks, Steve. And appreciate you passing it on to the next generation.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. Don't forget that all the links to our actions are in the show notes, so don't just listen. Click on those links. Take action with us. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple, YouTube, or wherever you find us. We're on Substack, too. So if you want the non-ad version of that, you can subscribe there, and we'd really, really appreciate your support. We will be back next week with more Practivist Pods, so until then, remember, hope is in action.
Oh, no.